Good afternoon, everyone. We're coming to you live, unless you are hearing it later, with the Immigration Wrap-Up, our end of the week show. I'm Martin Valko from our Dallas office, and with me is my esteemed law partner, Nick Chavez, from our Fort Worth office of Chavez Valko, and we are your key to immigration solutions. On Wednesdays, we typically bring you our business immigration segments, which is a show typically in English, and on Wednesday afternoons, we also have for you a show in Spanish. You can find us on all major social media platforms, on our website, keyvisa.com, and on our Lawpilot Guardian app that Nick and I co-founded. So like us, follow us, and listen to us so you can be well informed on all things immigration. If you have a question, go ahead and ask it or send us a message. And you can always book a consultation with Nick and I or with one of our immigration lawyers using a link below. Are you all ready? Then let's get started. Nick, you were one of the immigration attorneys that participated in the AILA chapter conference in El Paso last week, Friday and Saturday. You were one of the speakers. And you're also from El Paso. So why don't you tell us how it was? How was the conference, and how was it back home?
Oh man, wonderful. I took my associate or our associate Ben Hamilton, and that was the first time he actually stayed in El Paso, and he liked it. It's always good to be back home, man. It's Mexican food. You have my parents waiting for me after the conference, waiting with some comida. The Quaresma, which is Lent food, and we were just went nuts. It was great. I loved it. In terms of the conference, it was informative. We were expecting some information where we had a panel that consisted of representatives from the U.S. consulate, Ciudad Juarez, and we do a lot of business with them, right? We have clients that are waiting for their visa interviews. So it was interesting to learn about what's going on and get their perspective on things. They were basically giving us updates on the processing, especially now with COVID. And they did acknowledge that they're behind on some cases, but it appears that they're returning to normalcy. They're saying that the interviews that were backlogged for over a year or two they're now getting around to them, and they're sending out notices. So yeah, it's very good and reassuring to hear about that. But what I spoke about was more in line with the boring stuff that you and I encounter on a daily basis. It's the law management side of things, where we're managing a law office in the midst of a pandemic,
right?
And so I was giving tips to other attorneys about how to do that. And mostly we're talking about how many, since the pandemic, we've seen so many changes, not only since the pandemic, but also since the Trump era. We've seen night and day switches, new policies, things that your attorney needs to stay on top for their client, because if they're not on top of the latest policy news or latest updates, that could be harmful to your client. And one example is that it's the forms, immigration forms that we often see on our day-to-day. We prepare these forms, we send them to immigration. Well, they have expirations. And so we were talking about that this past week, one of the more important forms, which is referred to as the affidavit of support. This form is used with a person's application for adjustment status, is filed along with that application. It expired this week. So if you file your application for adjustment, and if you need to file an affidavit of support, make sure that you use the most updated version, which is the one that they started using on April 7th. Anything prior to that, the older version will be rejected. Those are the types of things and tips that we were giving to other immigration attorneys.
That's awesome. And seeing your folks was, Food, obviously, your mom's food is great, but being back in El Paso and
It's excellent. You know, I was and I should have brought my dad over to the conference, but I think he was busy. I know that he wanted to pick me up, and I said, "No, Dad, it's okay. I got an Uber." And he goes, "Okay, okay." And then maybe like 5 seconds later, he's "What's a Uber, mijo?" And I didn't want to explain it. It's like a taxi, Dad, but that's what it is.
yeah, I
Um,
remember him on our radio shows a few years back where you had him on, and it was fantastic to just kind of get his side. And I know he's a veteran and he served our country, and
yeah,
and so they're awesome folks.
yeah.
Yeah, and then this week, and then we also had Ben, who heads our business immigration program on Wednesdays. He also spoke, and he spoke on the business panel, and he was talking about the petitions, the I-140 petitions, and the ability to pay that has to be demonstrated by the employer, by the sponsor, to make sure that they have enough money, enough income, enough revenue to sponsor the foreign national that is generally our client as well. So he had a pretty good panel as well.
Yeah.
This week there are some updates. Again, last week, every week there's something dropping, and so that's why we'd like to, do these Friday afternoon shows so we can kind of do a wrap up for you and kind of bring you up to date. And so this week, a long-awaited prosecutorial discretion memo dropped, which was a follow-up to the February memo from the office of the, what is it, the OPLA, Office of the
Of ICE.
it's a legal advisor, so it's
Yeah.
principal, Office of the Principal Legal Advisor. And so it basically, it is a memo which directs the government ICE attorneys about what to do in certain types of cases. And so generally, when a foreign national is put in removal proceedings, used to be called deportation proceedings, they end up before an immigration judge. And typically that process begins with the issuance of what's called a notice to appear, an NTA, which is a charging document. And so this memo in particular allows these ICE attorneys to decide not to issue one, not to issue the NTA, or even to cancel an NTA, or to dismiss a pending case, which is really, really welcome news, because the immigration court nationwide faces approximately, it's over a million, so 1.3 or so million cases backlog.
Yeah.
And this memo particularly identifies 5 groups of people whose cases I should really look at dismissing if they are not priorities, enforcement priorities, if they don't pose threat to the nation, to the borders, or just in general public safety threats. And so, typically, those are people that have a history of military service, or they're serving, or they've been honorably discharged. They are likely to get some kind of a temporary or permanent status. So if you are awaiting a U visa, if you've been a victim of crime, and you also have been charged with, you're being removed for some kind of something, then that could be a base for having the proceedings terminated. Another factor is a compelling humanitarian factor. So if the person, the respondent who is in deportation proceedings and removal proceedings is being removed, and they have been a caretaker for a U.S. citizen parent or a child, or if they are unhealthy or something is going on, then that could be a reason. They might be a witness in a civil or criminal case, or that could be people that have been a long-term lawful permanent resident, somebody who's had a green card for many, many, many years, and they are in removal proceedings. So, that also is a base for having the removal proceedings terminated. So it is a really, really a good thing, because it's going to really give these ICE attorneys a discretion to to terminate or to cancel or not to issue NTAs, as opposed to when you go back to the prior administration, it was remove, right? I mean, it's, you've seen clients that got charged with a crime. So typically one would wait until a conviction is had, right? Somebody has been convicted, charged and convicted. And the Trump administration would put people in removal proceedings just for the offense, just for the charges, right? So somebody may have, you have all types of various crimes that somebody may be charged with, but generally you wait until there is a conclusion to it, there is a conviction, and so that hasn't been happening. So this is a really welcome 180 on that front. Did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
I mean, well put, Martin. I mean, look, it just makes sense to use all the resources that your agency has wisely. So ICE and the government, you mentioned the court, we have limited resources. That's where there's a backlog. It just makes sense to focus all your energy on deporting those people that you deem are bad, criminals, etc. But leave the abuelitas and the abuelitos, leave them alone. They haven't done anything. There could be something for them. Maybe they're just waiting for a son or daughter to turn 21, and then they're eligible for relief. They're not causing any harm. So why waste our resources on deporting every single person who doesn't have status? It doesn't make sense. So I welcome this new change, this policy. I think it makes sense, and it's a wise thing to do.
I just wanted to add that it is an interim memo, just like the one in February. So this is not a firm policy, but for now it is being used locally here in Dallas at the Dallas Immigration Court. We've heard that it will start being implemented, I believe, April 25th. So in a couple of weeks. And it gives these ICE attorneys a discretion and ability to just terminate the case outright without even consulting with an attorney if that person is being represented, or with that respondent, with that person. And so they could just basically, you could be receiving a notice. And so we've had a few cases where we want to be heard, and it's a very strong case. And so we are communicating with the OCC, with the Office of the Chief Counsel, with these government attorneys, that we want to go to court, we want to be heard, and hopefully we will win the case as opposed to having it terminated. So there's a lot of discussion and review that goes into these cases. And so, if you are in court and you are unrepresented, then you might want to schedule a consultation, whether with us or an experienced immigration law firm attorneys, and then make the proper decision. There's been some local news. I think you appeared on, you were interviewed by a local TV station yesterday about the Title 42, which we mentioned last week, that is going to be terminated or rescinded. This restriction that keeps asylum seekers and anybody who's crossing the country, the borders illegally, or even if they're asking for asylum at the border. For the last 2 years, the prior administration, and even this administration, have been using Title 42, which is basically a health-related policy to keep people that are entering the U.S. Unlawfully or asking for asylum. They basically, expel them. They will not let them enter. And so there are some agreements with Mexico, and some others are being flown somewhere else. But basically, it was a shield at the border that protected people coming in. That's being lifted on May 23rd, and there is a lot of ruckus, a lot of noise, and anytime there is anything that could be used for political gain, I would say. There are elections coming up, gubernatorial elections in November, and so what did you hear about that, and what did you interview about?
Well, this is what we talked about, Title 42, which is a great thing. It's if you remember the Trump administration, as you mentioned,
the canceling of it is a great thing, right? Because you said Title 42 is a great thing.
Well, the canceling of it, right? The lifting of it, I should say. But it was used to, expel the migrants, and all because of COVID. And But we all, and you said it perfectly, we have to remember, and this is why other people are saying, "Oh, Title 42, we need to control the border. We need Title 42 back." Well, we need to remember that Title 42 is a public health rule, and it's supposed to be a temporary measure to protect people, you and I, from diseases and infections that may be coming in from other parts of the world. But this rule was used for, in effect, controlling the border and restricting immigration. And what it did is just expelled a lot of people unnecessarily that had a viable claim. And yesterday we saw what happened with this week with Abbott. You talk about political reactions. Well, Governor Abbott said, "Well, I'm going to go down there. I'm going to deploy some state troopers, and we're going to arrest some people, and we're going to bus them to DC so they can learn their lesson." Okay, all right. So, well, that didn't go so well, and he had to backpedal there because, number one, the state of Texas or any state or any government official cannot force an individual to be bussed out of town like that. That's just, plain old wrong and illegal. And everybody knows that. Yeah. And, but the good thing though, I mean, we're all talking about how the appropriate reaction is to be more welcoming, to have communities, to have cities come in and help individuals find lawyers, get vaccinated, and pay for their tickets to visit their family here spread out in the United States, whoever that might be. So ironically, Abbott was doing the right thing by providing a free transportation service to DC. And there's a huge Salvadoran population there. So, if you're from El Salvador, hey, Abbott said, "I got your ticket." But it's ridiculous.
As long as they board voluntarily, I mean, and he provides you. I mean, imagine taking a Greyhound or something else, and here you just we'll get a free ride to DC.
We talked about that, and we've had some questions before. I have friends that say, "Well, why can't Texas do that?" Well, it's unconstitutional. We have a thing called the Supremacy Clause in the Constitution, which basically says that which overrides any state's involvement in what is purely a federal issue, just like immigration enforcement is. In other words, the state cannot do the federal government's job, and the Supremacy Clause of the Constitution makes that clear. And it's just like that old with the Arizona case out in 2010, I think it was that controversial Arizona statute where the court basically said that the state can't just write its or enforce its own immigration laws, that they can't do so nilly-willy, that's going to go against the federal government's authority to enforce immigration law. So yeah, we'll see what happens. But it's interesting. I think deploying 10,000 troops to the border is an absolute waste of resources. If you want to get bad people, focus on people inside the state, right? Because the people who are crossing, they're not bad people. These are families, mothers, fathers, children. They're in need of our help, and they're escaping a bad situation. And they have the right to apply for asylum under the law. A lot of people don't realize that, but that's what the law says.
That's right. Hey, Joe, did he already throw it in? Did I miss it? Do you have a little meme there about the Title 42? There you go. So some reflection on the Oscars show from a week ago or so. That's what is happening or will happen on May 23rd. Now, there was a bipartisan bill that was proposed in the Senate in I guess in reaction to this rescission of Title 42 or de-enforcement of Title 42, and that was and it was bipartisan, and so there is some speculation that some Democrats may cross over, and it may actually go into effect, presuming that it will go through the Congress, and that was basically pushing the May 23rd deadline by another 60 days from the date when either the CDC director or somebody within the CDC will certify to Congress that the COVID-19 is over, the pandemic in the US, and then you'll take 60 days from that date, and then you can go ahead and enforce to rescind Title 42. Plus, they are requesting that they provide a plan how to deal with this increase or this influx of immigrants coming through the southern border, because it is going to be, we have to be realistic about it. It is going to be an influx. The numbers will go up. And so, some local communities are afraid of what will happen and whether they have a plan. And so that's basically what these legislators are asking for. So I don't know if what do you think? Do you think that it has a chance of passing and then having this May 23rd postponed?
It could. It's important to have a plan, and that's what some of the Democrats are asking for. It's like, we want Title 42 to not be applied in these cases, but we don't have a plan. And I think that's a good thing to have as a plan. But if we're thinking about it right now, there are people being expelled who have viable asylum claims, meaning they have a well-founded fear of persecution. And if we're expelling them, that's not a good thing either. So Title 42, us being lawyers, we know that laws are written with an intended purpose, right? And if the intended purpose of 42 was to protect us from diseases, well, we know that, and the CDC has said this already, that there are other measures now, vaccinations, other measures that we can put into place to combat this pandemic. So it's already outlived its purpose here, and to continue on with Title 42, even on a temporary basis, I think it goes beyond the pale. I do agree that there should be something in place, and hopefully that's what they're doing. I think Mayorkas mentioned already that they are working with communities. They have already instructed their officers to be focusing on individuals who have criminal records. If they're apprehended, they're going to be referred over for criminal prosecution. So there are some things that they are doing, and I hope that they're in place when, in order for us to be able to handle such a great number of people coming in.
And there was also so moving on. There was a new policy also disclosed about the temporary protected status for people. So TPS, temporary protected status, are for those nationals of countries where after the designation due to war conditions. So for example, using perfect example is Ukraine, a TPS was announced. It's not in place yet, but it's been announced for Ukraine, for example. So the nationals have been affected of Ukraine, and so the country has been designated, and so they have this special protection, TPS protection. And so there was this new guidance that was announced this week about TPS and people with prior removal orders. Can you touch on that a bit?
Yeah, just really quickly. This is actually going to be a good thing, another good development. It is for individuals, mostly individuals from Central America who have been here for quite some time, who may have entered and they have they might have applied for asylum. The judge may have denied it, and it resulted in a deportation order. Or it could be that they sent them a notice to appear in front of a judge, and they did not show up, and that resulted in a deportation order. Well, individuals who have TPS, right, they also have the right to apply for travel. And if they're traveling, that's called advanced parole. They're traveling outside, they're coming back in. The question is, because of that deportation order, that's somewhat of a wall to get a green card. In general, if you have a deportation order, you can't apply for a green card. You have to do something about this wall. All right. So what some attorneys were doing, and I think rightfully so, is as a strategy, they were traveling with their permit outside. The moment you are outside, you are already taking care of that deportation order. That order of deportation becomes complete. And if it becomes a complete, when you come back, you have no business with immigration court. It's already done, resolved. And therefore, you can then apply for your green card directly with USCIS. There was some confusion because of that. There were people being denied because of that. And so what happened is that USCIS, they wanted to clarify this, and they said, look, if you have a deportation order, we're going to make it easier for you to reopen it, lift this wall up, and then apply for your green card without having to fight USCIS on who has jurisdiction. So it's a good development.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And it used to be, like you mentioned, that it was, as soon as you traveled out, you came back, you were able to adjust. And then last administration said, no, you can't do that. And you had to go through motions. And so that's certainly a welcome news for TPS recipients. And like you mentioned, the triangle, the Central American triangle countries would probably benefit most out of it, because people have had removal orders and then they had to take care of them before they can adjust, before they can apply for a green card.
Right.
There were a couple of other news about some proposals, and it seems like, every week or every couple of weeks there are some new bills, new laws being introduced, and it's given the current state of affairs and being an election season, election year, midterms, it's going to be tough. And so unless it's a bipartisan bill, it might have a tough chance of surviving in both chambers and then making it to the president. But there's one in particular in the House of Representatives that, they called it, fixing the system. And that was kind of recapturing thousands and thousands of unused family and employment-based visas or slots, whatever you want to call it. And it would even allow you to kind of like jump over people in the waiting line by paying a higher fee. I think it makes sense for some. Some of our clients are from India or from China. I mean, there are certain types of cases in preference categories where they just have to wait for 8, 9, 10 years before they can get a green card. And those are highly professional individuals that are contributing to our economy, and they're in technology fields and just all types of fields that are benefiting and pushing the country forward. And so many times they're just kind of undecided. They're just kind of almost on the fence, without really putting down roots and living in apartments as opposed to buying houses, because they don't know, well, will I get a green card? And we'll get, and they're extending their temporary work visa, their H-1B, for example, and they're waiting for their green card to be issued. And so, as I said, 10 years is a long time. And so there are some, these are proposals of, paying various fees from $1,500 up to $15,000 in some cases, so they could have their times, the wait times, canceled. And then there was the EAGLE Act. The EAGLE stands for Equal Access to Green Cards for Legal Employment, and there was some proposals on lifting the per country cap. So there is the percentage cap on these business-based green cards, for example, and there was I think there's a 7% per country limit on family sponsored visas, and that was proposed to be increased up to 15%. Let me see. There was a really nice factoid. So people from India had to wait. So there was about 719,000. So close to 750,000 applicants waiting in line to have their green card processed. And so it's about, what was the expected time? About 90 years before that would all clear. And then you have countries that have the same type of cap. I think Denmark was used in this article, and it's the same amount of visas that are available for people from this country. And so when you look at India and China, that account for about 40% of world's population. And then you compare it to Denmark, which accounts for like 0.001% of population, but they have the same type of chances. It is just not smart. I think our system is pretty antiquated, and there really ought to be some type of overhaul. But I'm not sure. I think that could be done in a comprehensive immigration reform, but that's not happening. That's not realistic this year. So we'll see these bills come through, and whether something will happen, we'll have to see. But they would have to be bipartisan for any kind of traction. Did you have any observations about that segment?
Well, I think that we're now in the age of, we've entered a different type of era here. We're not. It wasn't like last year where we were very hopeful of major overhauls and new visas for people who've lived here for such a long period of time, new options, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're looking at fixer-uppers. We're just looking at laws that are just going to fix the current system and make things either go faster or supply more visas or remove caps. But that's the extent of it. Is it good? Yeah. I mean, we would all prefer something more expansive, more comprehensive, that's actually going to fix the system and be good for our economy. But we'll see what happens. The midterm elections, that obviously will influence the pace of this bill and other discussions.
Yeah. It seems like we've had few topics that we've reached, and it seems like it might be the wrap on our immigration wrap up. Anything else you wanted to add?
Well, just basically we talked about how the law changes and shifting policies. Just basically be on the up and up, but be on top of it. Share our information, like it. You'll get our information. Download our app. Our app will we'll be sending out alerts about news and important things, among other important features. But that's what I would say. Today is this era right here that we're in is the era of staying on top of things.
And there's no better way of staying on top of really breaking news than downloading our app, registering for it, and downloading it. And so you'll be connected to our office. And this big red button in the middle of the screen helps to connect you in the event of an emergency. So when you press it, we know where you are and what you are saying, and then hopefully we can assist you. But as Nick said about staying on top, any news breaks, we'll send it to you through push notifications, so you'll get it to your phones. You can invite friends and family to it. It also has a Know Your Rights section, so very useful tips about dealing with law enforcement, with immigration officials, whether you're at home or in the car or in the public. It's just there's no better way of staying connected, I would say. And this is a platform and an app that Nick and I co-founded. And if you want to stay on top of the most recent immigration news and be connected to us in this case, then click on the link in the comments below. Well, and with that, it is a wrap, Nick. I will see you. When will I see you? Next week. Anyways, everybody have a great weekend and stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you next week. And thank you to our producer, Joe. All right, everybody, take care. Have a good one. Bye-bye.